the FBI has fired Special Agent Peter Strzok, and the president is applauding the decision. Strzok had been one of the lead agents investigating Russian meddling in the 2016 presidential election. He was removed from the probe after it was revealed he sent anti-Trump text messages to a former FBI lawyer with whom he was having an affair. In a tweet earlier, the president said, quote, "Agent Peter Strzok was just fired from the FBI. Finally, the list of bad players in the FBI and DOJ gets longer and longer." Joining me now from our D.C. newsroom is CBS News Washington correspondent Paula Reid. Hi, Paula. So, according to his lawyer, Strzok was initially supposed to just get a demotion and a 60-day suspension. What does the fact that he was fired signify to you?
Well, the fact that FBI leadership overrode that recommendation to give him a demotion and a suspension, it sends a message that what he did was not acceptable. The message that they are trying to get out is that, look, even if you may have a First Amendment right to express your opinion, of course, you have personal opinions, you cannot be saying things like this about the targets or possible targets of investigations in the course of your work. So they are sending a very clear signal that this is unacceptable. But Strzok's attorneys argue that First Amendment issue. They say, look, he was expressing his opinions on his personal time in the context of a personal relationship. They also point out the fact that the inspector general found that he didn't alter the outcome of this investigation. Further, they point out that if he really wanted to undermine then candidate Trump's possibilities for becoming president, that he would have leaked the fact that there was an investigation. But ultimately, the FBI is sending a very strong message today that these kinds of comments about anyone not acceptable.
And so, Paula, President Trump has pointed to Strzok as proof that the Mueller probe and the FBI are biased. Where does that leave us now that Strzok is out of a job?
Well, Strzok has certainly done some damage. He's become the face of people who want to undermine the credibility of the Russian investigation or the Justice Department as a whole. I mean, if you read the text messages that he sent to Lisa Page, both of them were working on very high-profile investigations. He was first working on the Clinton email investigation, then he was working on the Russia probe, and the types of things that he was saying about then candidate Trump and his supporters were very derogatory. So anyone who thinks, well, is there possibly an anti-Trump bias within these institutions, you look at these texts and you say, well, this appears to be evidence of that. But Tanya, it's important to note, Peter Strzok wasn't handling these investigations by himself. He was an upper level official, but there were many officials, including attorneys general, between him and the final decisions. Right. So he didn't make the decisions. I've also spoken with some of his superiors who worked with him on both investigations. They say they did not see any bias in terms of how he handled the day-to-day decisions with either one of these investigations.
All right, Paula, turning now to the tax and bank fraud trial of former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort. Federal prosecutors are expected to wrap up their case soon. You've been following this trial very, very closely. What is the latest on that front?
Well, it's so interesting because ultimately this is a referendum on the credibility of the special counsel's office, and now it almost takes on more significance now that we're talking about Peter Strzok again, because this will be sort of an up or down vote on whether or not what the special counsel has been up to for the past year. Did they bring enough evidence to actually convict someone? Today, court starts late today, starts in the afternoon, and the jury will hear from at least one bank official who will testify to how Manafort allegedly submitted false information. He lied essentially on mortgage applications that he was filling out. So it'll be very interesting to see. The prosecution is expected to wrap up in a day or two. It'll be interesting to see how much of a defense Manafort's team puts on. They were originally expected them to put on 3 days worth of defense. It could be as little as half a day.
And what kind of specific evidence has the prosecution laid out? Paula, if you would walk us through the evidence the jury will be considering in their verdicts.
Sure. So when they get the case, likely later this week, they are going to be asking themselves whether or not they believe that Manafort worked overseas for foreign officials, earned tens of millions of dollars, and instead of having a check sent to one of his 6 homes, instead that he allegedly had that stashed in offshore accounts, and then he got that money out of those accounts by laundering it through luxury purchases. And they will have to go back and examine the testimony from people who helped him set up those bank accounts, from the vendors from whom he purchased, that infamous ostrich coat or some of these luxury homes. And then also hear from bank officials who helped him with his taxes or mortgage applications and hear how they really weren't getting the full story or were outright being lied to. Now, of course, there is the testimony of his former associate, Rick Gates. Rick Gates is a problematic witness. He has a lot of personal baggage. He also admitted to embezzling from Manafort. But to be clear, I mean, this case does not rest on the testimony of Rick Gates. Really, it rests on the testimony of forensic accountants who work for the FBI, bank officials. There is a mountain, I think it's fair to say, of evidence to support the prosecution's case. The question is whether or not the jury believes all of it.
All right, Paula Reid, they will have a lot to consider. Thank you.